the cloud. Okay, good evening, everybody. Today I will give a bit of an overview. We come to the finishing of the Sefer Bereishis with Vayechi, and we start a new Sefer Shmois. I wanted just to discuss the purpose of the Sefer Bereishis, of how it helps us in the understanding of what the Torah wants to give us as a message. First of all, I would like to thank Omer Schneider, the Bocha Achoshev Omer Schneider. I think that he is in the call for helping me in setting it up, as I will base myself, especially the second part, I will base myself on the Torah from Manitou and from Harav Sherki, which I mentioned already a lot. Of course, there's Shivim Ponim La Torah, so I'm just showing you one angle, but it is an angle which is their specialization. So the specialization is on the understanding that Sefer Bereishis is not just a list of events that can be understood and that has to be learned event by event to know what we have to take out from it, what is the types of Musar that we have to learn from it, which we normally do in mainstream Rabbonim. But what they did is they actually found a link and a very nice line, and which actually supports the what we can call a certain Zionism, and the religious Zionism, of course, has the basis in that case in the whole Sefer Bereishis. So it is a bit of a colored drosha, but it's more as because it is the only one that I found that really gives a very nice line. And so therefore, since we are at the end of Bereishis, I'm taking the opportunity to go ahead. And again, thank you to Omer for his input. I think we set more than 3 hours together today, and it was extremely enriching and pleasant. So let's start. The Sefer Bereishis, as I said, is not only a sample of, not only a kind of a list of different events that is connected through it together by just having time and a bit of consequences of something that is a cause and an effect, but it is also kind of a sample of what is going to come in the Achis HaYomim. So everything that we see is basically in a small sample, in a small appetizer that will happen eventually at the end. For example, the creation of the world, and as we said, is the spitz of that creation is the Gan Eden, is also the place of the dwelling of Hashem. It's where the Shechina is residing, and he needs the humans in order to feel the Tanug, as our Tanugenu is also his Tanug. Our Tzoros is also his Tzar, but Tzorosam Loitzor, that Boinsham wants to feel and feels what we feel and wants to live on this world. And therefore he has created a holy place, which is the Gan Eden. It was a very short time. That's why I say everything has been quite short-lived. There was a disaster of the first Aveira, and then the Shechina went up and came back down on the oil from Soro Imeinu. So this is the next actually phase where our mother Soro, it's the Shechina, as we already discussed, is that the three elements of the Shechina Yitzchok saw in his mother's oil, and that's how he knew that Rivko was the right woman, because these three elements came back, and the oil from Soro Imeinu was the model, is the blueprint of the Mishkan, as I already explained, and the Mishkan, of course, is the blueprint of the Beis HaMikdash. And so therefore everything is, the beginning is always the Gan Eden, and eventually the idea is that we will go back to that level, that when Moshiach will come, we will rebuild everything, and we will in that case enjoy the Gan Eden, but for a much longer period. After the Gan Eden comes normally, after Bias HaMoshiach, according to the Rambam, comes the Olam Habo. The Olam Habo normally is considered as the Rambam as something which is very much Ruchnius. It is nothing to do with Gashmius, but we can say that the Mabul is kind of a transitional phase from Olam Hazeh to an Olam Habo. As we saw already also in another shir to explain the dinosaurs, we saw the Tiferes Yisrael, who actually explained in his Sefer Oira Chaim, which I think is printed at the end of Seder Nezikin, where he explains the dinosaurs as being animals that lived in the previous world, and we live in Olam Habo of the previous world. And at some point, this world might be destroyed, and we will go to a next world. And we go through a Toyo Uvoyo again, and the whole creation is repeated again. So the Olam Habo and Olam HaKadmon is actually the world that we have. And so the Mabul is kind of a recreation and a little sample of what is going eventually to happen, where there was a Mabul, everything became back as the level of originally, and Noach was put in a box, and he was transported from one world to the next world, but not in a how do you call it, a ruchnistic way, but in really in a gashmistic way. So this is to represent the last level, which is the Olam Habo. So it's a kind of a little appetizer of what is going to happen. The klole that Noach gave, so after we came to the level of Noach gave a klole to Ham, to his son, and there are three nations. If you look in the history of the Jewish nation, there are three nations that we had to destroy, that we actually destroyed, which are Mitzrayim, with in the Yam Suf, all the men, the military men were destroyed in Mitzrayim. The Canaanim, eventually, nearly all of them were destroyed, and the Midyonim. And actually, the Midyonim, we can say that they are from Cush. My proof, that's a personal proof, is because Tzipora was from Yisroi, from Midian, Kohen Midian, and Tzipora is called the Cushis. So basically it was Cush and Canaan and Mitzrayim are the descendants from Ham, and therefore the idea behind that is that when we receive a klole, then it means that the moment that you have been making averas, you have a chance of being annihilated, of being destroyed. So it was kind of an explanation why those three nations had what we can even say kind of a Shoah, if you want to use the modern explanation, modern words, vocabulary, is that because they are descendants of a klolo that comes straight from Noach, their father. So that's a little bit to give it a bit of a context. And we also received the klolo. We received in Bechukoisa and Moshe Rabbeinu. So we have also received the klolo. So we have to be very careful. So if we have come to a certain threshold of Averas, this results in a very big golus and a terrible suffering that will follow. Now, so that's a little bit the story until Noach. Then we come to the distinction of Aver. Now, Aver is very important because Aver is the father of the Ivrim, of all the Ivrim. And this nation seems to be having some particularities that other nations don't have. First of all, they are what we call universal or cosmopolitan. So they are used to live in Canaan. The original place was Canaan. That's why it says also in the Pasuk Haknani Oz Bo'oretz that the land of the Ivrim was Canaan. But as Yosef Atzadik says to Paroi, Me'eretz o Ivrim, Onoichi, so basically, what does he mean, Me'eretz o Ivrim, Onoichi, meaning that he is, when he says to, I don't remember anymore, but he says Me'eretz o Ivrim, it means that they understood, the Egyptian understood where was the Eretz o Ivrim, so they understood, and also the word Haknani, Oz Bo'oretz, not like the Ibn Ezra who says something which the Ramban said that it is apikorsus, so I will not mention it here right now, that's a separate shir, but it means the Aknani Oz Bo'oretz because originally it was the Ivrim. Now, what was the speciality of the Ivrim was that they were very much engaged into what we can call today spiritism. They had a certain feeling for prophecy, to understand things and to see things, also to understand dreams. When Yosef says, I am an Ivri, tell me the dream, meaning I am an Ivri, and therefore I know how to interpret dreams. When Paroi, when the Saramashkim said, he says, oh, there is an Ivri that knows how to interpret dreams. So the fact that he's an Ivri also confirms to Paroi, not just anybody that was in prison that claims something, but he's an Ivri. Ivri were known to be dream readers, known to have the possibilities, the capabilities of receiving prophecy. And also, as we see that Terach also sold a little Getchkelech, as they say in Yiddish, little gods, depending on what you have. You have tummy ache. If you have tummy ache, then you have this. If you have a problem of parnosa, then you take this. So they had like what we call today kameas, to be very naughty, but basically this is the element of terach. So terach was actually the Ivrim were a nation that were wanderers, and they suffered also a lot, as we see the Urkazdim. So very similar to what we can say is the status of the Jews today, and we are, after all, Ivrim, very highly in spiritualism and in universalism, cosmopolitans. We wander around the world. We don't mind to wander the world, and we are also punished and tried people to try to destroy us, but eventually always tried to go back to Canaan, as Terach wanted to go to Canaan, but he stopped in Choron. So we see here always this drive that we have to go back to our original state, but eventually we don't mind to wander around. It's a very important element. So this is the creation of the family of the Ivrim. The story of Bovel is something also very important, because it was from that moment on that the humanity, which the humanity was that tried to become one, and tried to become humanity tried to say, well, we will create a oneness, an ichud of humanity, and we will have one language, and whoever doesn't speak that language is out. Whoever is not, doesn't look like us, is out. So there is no room for diversity, and this is something which is terrible, because you need diversity. Rebbeinu Shalom has created human beings with diversity also in his personalities, but also wanted to create a lot of different talents and capabilities, skills and competences and things and around the world, and bringing up all these elements to create a much more beautiful world. And so he actually spread them geographically, spread them from language, so culturally, and he created different nations, and these 70 nations are coming out of that. But whoever speaks about nation, when we speak about the concept of a nation, that is not a family, that is not a cultural group. A nation meaning that it is people that live in a particular land that is surrounded by a border and with a flag and with a king, etc. There is always, and this is the only language that nations speak to each other, is either war or peace. So it's never, there is always two nations that come together if they speak to heads of nations. So it is trying to create a peaceful atmosphere, because nations, the language is that they know between themselves is war, or there is a discussion of peace. But this is what it's always all about. And so the Rebbeinu Shalom, Shalom, and Shalom, the Shechina can only be on this world when there is Shalom, as the Rambam at the end of Seder Moed explained. So the idea behind that is that Avram was chosen as being the father of a particular nation. Now we have to understand, and we explained that Avram was an Ivri, so he went around and he made yeshivas, and like I said, this is the proper Chabadske, basically, who wanted to convert all the world into monotheism. A little bit what Rav Sherke calls Islam. He was a Muslim. He was a proper Muslim in originally, because the only thing that he wanted is that everybody should believe in one God, throw away all the Avodah Zorahs, and understand that there is only one God, and try to convince them and teach them Kabbalah. And this actually worked, because in all the mystical teachings in the whole world, even till Asia, are still based on the Kabbalah. If those who know a little bit Kabbalah and they know the mysticism, they see that they have one source, and this source can only come from Avraham Avinu, which actually did it. But Hashem told him, stop, don't do this anymore. That's okay, fine, you've done it, and there will be other people that will continue your job. Your job now is to create a nation. And the nation, you have to understand, for Avraham Avinu, is actually something which is against his nature. Because nation meaning that it is borders, and it is about politics and about kingdom, about war, and this is something which Avram was not actually in his mind, was what he dreamt of doing the rest of his life. And Hashem said to him, Lech Lecho, I want you to go to Canaan. I want you there to see it and to be there and to actually build up a nation. And the first things afterwards, what he had to do, he had to fight with kings. So he had to show Malchus. I'm sure that for him it was kind of against his nature, because the Ivrim are not like that. He had to actually negotiate. He had to negotiate on land. He actually lost a bit of land to the negotiation. And as Rav Sherki Omanitu explains, is that because of that negotiation where he gave up a bit of land, Hashem punished him with Akedas Yitzchok. So he said, okay, you don't want the land that I promise you, fine, but then I'll take away then your son, because that means that you don't show that you want the land. So basically the whole Akedas Yitzchok is kind of a reaction on the aptitude that Avraham Avinu had to receive a few times. Hashem had to tell him. But the main idea, what Hashem wanted to tell him, is you have to create a nation. It's going to be a holy nation. So all the mishpotim that a person, that the nation will deal with, will become holy. When there is shnaim she'orzu betalis, or wechor shenogach esaporo, these dinim, which are normally worldly dinim, that are not requiring any, there's no spirituality behind it, but those dinim become holy. They become spiritual. And this is something quite unique. And we have to create a unique nation that where in other words, the idea behind it is that since we have a lot of nations, by creating one nation in the middle that will be a holy nation, which is a unique concept, which don't exist in the whole world until now, and we still need to develop it with the coming of Mashiach. And this holiness, the holy nation, is actually going to create harmony, because all the nations of the world will plant in him the source, so that they can take out from, and they will become, instead of nations, it will become mishpechos. So the goy, the idea of the goyhem mishpechosehem and le mishpechosehem and le shoinoisom. So this psukim that we see many times in Nach, these three elements, which are the cultural people, the families, and then the goyim, which means the nations. So the nation part will become mishpechos. So there will be an harmony in the world, and this is the end goal of why Hashem is actually doing that. So it's kind of utopic, kind of the utopic view of what is going to be in the Achis HaYomim. And in order to do that, the Rebbeinu Shalom promised it to him, and because Rebbeinu Shalom was afraid, the Rebbeinu Shalom killed this doim, killed in a terrible way this doim, killed the Mabul. So basically he can, maybe the Rebbeinu Shalom at some point will change his mind. So the Rebbeinu Shalom made the Bris Ben Absurim. I explained this already. The Bris Ben Absurim is a promise that is unconditional. Basically, it is not because of Midas Adin and not because of Midas Rachmim, but it is because of the middle part, the fire that went through the three parts of the animals, which represent the spheres, which are not the left spheres and the right spheres. So Hashem, the fire went through the middle part, which is the element that is fixed, that is unconditional, that does not require not Midas Adin, not Midas Rachmim, not Midas Adin. The Canaanim did not make Averis enough, as it says in the Pasuk, not Midas Rachmim, also not because of the law, but simply because he chose Avram to be. Now, we said already that Avram was the ultimate Ivri, kind of, at this time. He was the closest to the level of Adam Rishon, but he still had genetically some elements which were, for his offspring, had to be filtered out. And so therefore, his first children were Yishmael and then Yitzchok. So Yishmael is the one that filtered a little bit out of the elements that were not really proper Ivrim, and Yitzchok was even more Ivri, because he was the idea that everything, the other part is went into Yishmael, and Yitzchok itself was also not 100% the genetics, as this is what the Kuzari explains, and therefore he says that from Yitzchok came Yaakov, but also Esau. So Esau took a part of Yitzchok, and then it split up into Yaakov, and only Yaakov, who is the purest form of the Ivri, which all his 12 children were all set together, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, in order to show to Yaakov Avinu, when he was worried, that we are all pure, and therefore from now on we can say this is going to be the Jewish people. And also we see that Malach told him, Taka, that you're not going to be anymore an Ivri, you're going to be a Yisrael, which is the basis of the nationality of Yisrael. in the more Kabbalistic form, the three forefathers that we saw, Avrom, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, are the three midos. Manitou explains that Avrom is Chesed and Yitzchak is Din. That is original, like also the Kabbalists explain. But Yaakov, he says this is Rachamim. He uses the expression a cheder, as we say in Yiddish. The cheder is the place where children go to learn Yiddishkeit, and Yiddishkeit means it is Chesed, Din, and Rachamim. And therefore he criticized a little bit the Haredim because they changed the letters. The Dalet and the Resh became Resh Dalet, but that's besides the point because of his opinion that he does not agree with the Haredim. But in any case, it's the Chesed, Din, and Rachamim, or Chesed, Din, and Emes, according to the Kabbalists. But you need to have these three elements in order to create the Jewish people. The idea of the Golos Mitzrayim, and that's a very important element. The Golos Mitzrayim is to bring and learn the ideal civilization and the kingdom and economy and warfare and culture to the Ivrim through the nation that was at the highest level. The highest nation that existed in the world at that time was the Mitzrayim. And so the idea is that the Rebbeinu sent us to Mitzrayim so that we should learn, and we should learn to become a nation from them, and we should take the Mitzrayim with us, which is the chelek from nationality, with us to Eretz Yisrael. That's why it's called Yetzias Mitzrayim. The Chazal don't call it Yetzia Mi Mitzrayim, but Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's like we take out the Mitzrayim out of Mitzrayim. So we take the Mitzrayim out and we bring it to Eretz Yisrael. So this is a very important element. This is something which is quite a little bit for me originally a bit shocking, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to go into the whole discussion there, but that's why also the Erev Raft came with, because they are part of the Mitzrayim and they created problems. And the whole idea was originally a different idea, but this is something else. But the plan turned a bit sour, and instead of 400 years, Klal Yisrael remained only 210 years or 190 years, and because they made them suffer too much. But the idea is that Klal Yisrael had to go through the phases of Mitzrayim in order to take the Mitzrayim, this know-how of how to create a nation and to bring it up to Eretz Yisrael and to develop it further there, but with a kedusha, with the mitzvahs, and doing everything that we do in a nation should have a holiness in it. The Geula is also sampled in this story, and the Geula started with Yosef HaTzadik. So the first element is Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik became a king. He became a paroi. He was be'etzem a kind of Mitzri, a Jewish Egyptian, so very what we could call today a Belgian Jew of a Jewish Belgium, or whatever you want to say, but he's very cosmopolitan. And at the end of his life, he says that you will go up, and then please take my bones up also to Eretz Yisrael. So basically, he turned into what we call the Moshiach ben Yosef. So in the beginning, he was really understanding the politics, and he was a proper king, and he was functioning as a king, but he showed his loyalty to the concept of the Geula by asking that we should bring also his bones to Eretz Yisrael. So his longing for Eretz Yisrael and the understanding that this is, therefore he became what we call the Moshiach ben Yosef. So the Moshiach ben Yosef is basically the beginning of the Geula, meaning that it is the element of creating a nation, purely a nation which has a military, which has a parliament and all the things, but with the mitzvah, so with the kedusha. And then afterwards comes the Moshiach ben David, which is actually the one that brings what we call religiosity, which brings the individual religiosity, which is hardly in the Torah. In the Torah's Moshe, you hardly see elements of Musar, of that are talking to the individual. It is more halachas of how to what the Bezdin have to do, and what you're allowed to do, what not allowed to, how to make warfare, and how to do all kinds of things that to the lands and the cities and the things from the Bezdin. And the rest, the Musar, we don't have so much in the Torah. The first one, I think, that have written something which is close to Musar is David HaMelech with Tehillim. Tehillim is the first sefer who be'etzem speaks about our relationship with Hashem, the closeness to Hashem, our fears, our weaknesses, our strength, our exaltation, our simcha, and also, but also our sadness and our despair. So it's talking about our as an individual, not as a nation. And so David HaMelech is the first one to come with this, with an element of religiosity, and this comes later. In other words, there is the Moshiach ben Yosef, and then comes the Moshiach ben David that adds the element of the closeness to Hashem, and the idea of the self-development and the feeling that each individual must play in his own right. So you could say that basically the idea that we were Ivrim in the beginning and we were a nation of Nevi'im, but since the Nevi'im, we lost the Nevi'im, by the end of the Nevi'im, we have lost also then the connection with Hashem. And so the only way we could connect with Hashem is through this religiosity, the davening and the learning Torah. We have created 3 times of davening. As Chazal tell us, that's because people needed it, and we needed to feel good because we didn't have any more Nevi'im. So the only way that we could connect with Hashem is through our own personal development. But originally it was the channel that connected us to Hashem was through the Beis Hamikdash, and we didn't need really this whole davening as we do it today, simply because there were Nevi'im. But since the Nevi'im stopped, so the last Novi, the last Anshe Knesset Agdola created the Nusach HaTfilah, which was in there was a secret of how to connect with Hashem in the secret formula, that if we say that, you get kind of a connection with Hashem. And this is the element of the moment that went into Golus. We also became Yehudim. So we were Ivrim, we became Israel, and then we became Yehudim, which is in the Megillah, which is the cosmopolitan, which is the element of how we combine our religiosity with the nation that we live into, and we combine them together. A Belgian Jew is not the same as a Jew from Paris. It's different, and we all need to. The idea of the Golus is actually to bring up all these different elements of the different nations, to bring this cultural and the strength, the positive sides of these nations, to bring them all and come back. And the kibbutz golios is to come back and just create that in the nation that we are building. And so this 2-step, which is the last step, which is indeed the whole story of Yosef, and then the continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, exactly the same story. He was, as the Ibn Ezra says, and I'm saying it in the name of the Ibn Ezra says that he was a Mitzri. So he was basically, he saw himself as being a cosmopolitan. He is a Mitzri on one hand, because Le'ochiv, when he went out, he says, and then he went out Le'ochiv. Ibn Ezra says, who are Le'ochiv? Le'ochiv, he went to the Egyptians. So he was Be'etzem an Egyptian, which is also a Jew, which is also an Ivri. And so when he saw how the Egyptian made the Jews suffer for nothing, he decided to be part of the Jewish nation and not of the Egyptian nation. And since the Jews did not accept him neither, so he lost his nationality of Egyptian, he lost his nationality of Ivrim, and so he went to Midian. In order 40 years, he lived in Midian thinking that he is going to save Midian. But then Hashem sent him back. No, you are an Ivri, and this is your nation. What happened then happened. Now you can go back. Everything is fine. So you see, this whole story is always a repetition, but it's a continuation of the element of first starts saving of the Gashmius saving, but with the idea of making it holy, and eventually comes the Moshiach ben David, which is the Yehudo. First is the Yosef, and then comes the Yehudo. The Yosef Shevet me Yehudo. This is the last one that is going to remain Nitzris, because that adds the religiosity on the individual level. But in the first element is, of course, that we need to create a nation. The question there is, and this is a political or a religious question, is whether or not today the Medinas Yisrael is already a beginning, Aschalte di Geula, since we see that all the nations have sent already their representative in this united nation of Israel, which is a United Nations of multiple nations of the whole world, which is basically already what is is already happening and now. And even those who want to say that we have to wait, the question is, how long do we have to wait? Like the Chazon Ish said, we can't say hal now because we don't know what is going to happen. We have to wait a few tens of years. So the question is, how long do we have to wait in order to be able to say, yes, it is already Nasrata de Gula or not? And of course, the other side, the Haredim, and they will claim that the Medrash says that when before Yaakov came to Mitzrayim, he sent Yehuda to create a yeshiva. And a yeshiva is basically the element of Torah. So he said that first we need to have Torah before we can start thinking of the nationality, nationalism. So first we need to make sure that we have Torah, and that is the main target, that we have to make sure that the fundamentals remain as a Torah. So I guess that you can have a little bit both elements in this story, but it's what is according to their eyes, it's clearly, like I said, it's a sample, an appetizer in the whole story of Bereishis, in what was going to happen in the Achis Hayomim. The question is, are we already now at the specific? Of course, we are in the Achis Hayomim. We believe that Mashiach will come any moment, but are we already now in the phase of Mashiach ben Yosef? Is Mashiach ben Yosef a person, or is it a group of people? And does Mashiach ben Yosef have to be religious? As we saw, also Bar Kokhba was also not known to be the big Talmid Chochem, but and Rabbi Akiva also believed eventually that he could be the Mashiach ben Yosef. So the idea of having this whole element of returning to the land and being successful in this element is maybe or not. That's the debate, of course, in the Asalta de Geula. And I'm not going to take a position here, because that's not my role in this shir. But in any case, it's clearly a very strong, nice element of discussion. But it makes the whole, explaining the whole story, why in the Torah's Moshe there is not a lot that is more in the Tehillim, in Koheles, in Shir HaShirim. You have much more about your self-development and about your feelings and about getting close to Hashem. And in Torah's Moshe, you have more national laws that refer to how to create a nation, and less even on Das Hashem, which the Rambam explains. There is very little about who is Hashem. The Das is Hashem, which is the spitz of all the mitzvahs, is very little even described in Torah's Moshe. And so therefore it can be explained, because in any case, the whole agenda and the whole purpose of the whole story of what is Bereishis, and then Shemo is the building of the Mishkan, and Vayikra, the Aluchas of the Mishkan, and then the Bamidbar is the 40 years of the wandering in order to eventually enter Eretz Yisrael, and then the Sefer Dvorim, which is clearly the whole time Moshe Rabbeinu warns them, the whole idea is to live on that land and to create a nation and be stable on that nation and be prosperous on that land. It is more about the land and how long. So everything is about the link with the land. So it's in less with the individuality, which is more later on, as I said, has been introduced with David HaMelech, and that we have taken over. Since we don't have a Beis Hamikdash and we don't have Nevi'im, we have taken over that element, and we are now at that stage where we are. And so just to resume very, very quickly, and I'm late. First of all, thank you to Omer, but mainly the Bereishis is a sample of what's going to come Achis Hayomim. The creation is about the Gan Eden. The Gan Eden is the place of resting of Hashem, which is afterwards the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. The Mabul is to show us what is going to happen later, which is the Olam Habo. The Klolo of Noach is to explain why we destroyed the three nations. The distinction of Ever, meaning the Hebrews, the Ivrim, is what they have as a particularity, and this is what makes them diverse from the others. The Babylon, the story of the Bovel is instead of an Achdus, they wanted to create an Ichud, but an Ichud is not good because it does not leave room for diversity, and it creates then people kill whoever is not similar to what they are. Instead of learning how to deal with diversity, they become one, and that's why there was the creation of all the different nations. And because nations create wars, the Rebbeinu Shalom chose Avram that we should be the nation, he has to create a nation, although it's not part of his ambition. He was not a part of his ambition, but he had to create a nation, and this nation had to be a nation of Kedusha, so that the Nivucho V'cho Kol Mishpecho Yisrael Adomo, to create a harmony in the world. We said that that Avrom had to have Yitzchak and Yaakov, that's already the Kuzari, in order to come to that level. The Golos Mitzrayim was to take out of Mitzrayim the elements of Malchus, of how to run a country, because they did not have the experience. It's kind of it was a way to form them in order to be able to bring these elements back to Eretz Yisrael. And then the Geula, it starts off always with first a kingdom that is built, a kingdom that is non-religious kingdom, but just a kingdom with religious rules. And then the religiosity comes later on with the Moshiach ben David, with thanks to David HaMelech, that actually introduced that element as well, which is not normally in the Torah's Moshe, much less in the Torah's Moshe, and much more in the Tehillim and in Shir Hashirim and in Koheles, etc. And so the discussion was more is, what are we today? That is, of course, open for debate, and there is, of course, a lot of different opinions. We saw the three opinions: either those who believe that we are clearly Naschalta de Gula, those who oppose it very strongly against them, and then the middle part, which is the majority of the Orthodox Jews, which are what we call maybe the Agodistim, which are those who are hopeful Zionists. So they say, we don't know, we just have to wait and see. We hope if it's good, then it's good. And then if Mashiach will come thanks to that, why not? We're always open, and we are open to we will not stop him. And we are hopeful that this is indeed Aschalta de Gult. But as we don't know, we are not going to base ourselves on it, and we're going to be a little bit more cautious. Any questions? Okay, so I thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't go too quick. I will stop the recording.